think it's on. Streaming is on here. Okay, you are able to see my PPT now, correct?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. So in the previous session, we had Yugala Kishore Prabhu speak on chapter 11, and now we are coming to chapter 12. This chapter 12 marks the culmination of one of the sections, in one sense, so to say, of the Bhagavad Gita. So chapter 1 to 6 is one section, and chapter 7 to 12 is another section of the Bhagavad Gita. And if you had noticed carefully, as we had gone through the different chapters, there was a consistent theme in here from chapter 7 through 12. And the theme is, there is something called as bhakti, which was spoken differently as Ananya Bhakti, etc., which is said to be the highest means of spiritual realization, and which Krishna is exhibiting it continuously. And not just that, but Krishna is explaining it continuously. It also happens that he speaks about he makes Arjuna get to know about the universal form. And at the end of this universal form, Krishna finally comes down to his four-handed form and then his two-handed form. And that is where, last time I think we all stopped, where Arjuna is really happy to see this two-handed form of the Supreme Lord. He is attached to this form of the Supreme Lord, and Krishna himself is saying that this two-handed form is my original form. This Shyama Sundara form is my original form. Many times, when you go through the lectures from Bhagavad Gita from different sources, apart from the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, most of them will emphasize on this universal form of the Supreme Lord. But instead, they miss this key essence that Arjuna was bewildered on seeing this universal form, and it is a temporary form, and Krishna himself brought his original form to that of the two-handed Shyamasundara form. So, if you all might have noticed that so far, and therefore the key part of it is attachment to Krishna's personal form is the highest spiritual realization, and it has been emphasized earlier too. So let's just go quickly through some of these earlier verses which talked about it. In chapter 6, text number 47, Yoginam api sarvesham matkate nantaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yuktatamo mataha. Yoginam, he says, of all the different kind of yogis, matgaten antaratmana. Antaratmana, within himself, he is always thinking, feeling, willing for me. And does what? Shraddhavan bhajate yomam. With great faith. Shraddhavan, or with full faith, what does he do? Bhajate yomam. The word bhaj is the root for devotional service, bhakti. Bhakti comes from this root bhaj. So he's saying, the one who renders devotional service unto me. What is this meaning of devotional service? What all does it encompass? Time willing, we will focus on that in the second portion of today's session. The first portion of today's session is going to be on another important verse in the 12th chapter. So we will go a little bit more into the details of this word, the definition of the word bhakti. Shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yukta tamo mataha. He is said to be the highest of all. Like we have Uttama, right? In a similar way, Krishna is telling here, Yuktatama. Uttama means the best, Yuktatama is the best. And in whose opinion is the best? Me, Same, in my opinion, Mataha, means in my opinion. So Krishna himself is telling, you can do all this kind of isms, that kind of isms, but what he likes is this Shraddhavan Bhajate Yomam. I think I have to mute somebody. Okay. Now, along with this, we also have right in the next chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. If suppose bhakti is the best, how is it that we can practice bhakti? And he says, Maya sakta mana partha yogam yunjan madashrayah asamshayam samagram mam yathajnasasi tat shrunu. He says, O son of Pritha, that is Partha, that's how he addresses here. Here, how by practicing yoga and full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. So the key operative word is here. The practice of this word bhakti, of this field of bhakti, comes from here. I'm having some problem with my internet, with my power connectivity here. I think the slide, okay, it's coming up now. Okay. So Krishna encourages Arjuna to know more about bhakti through the process of hearing. And not just that, in chapter 8, right from chapter 7, 1 minute. Wait a minute, let me bring my slides back here. From chapter 6, 7, 8 onwards, one by one, gradually he expounds the utility of bhakti and why bhakti is great, to all culminate now, like what is going to speak now, with a very important question that is going to be answered by Krishna, with an important question of Arjuna, which is going to be answered by, very important question of Arjuna to be answered by Krishna. And in chapter 8, we heard that if suppose the path of bhakti is the great, then usually at the end of this life, we should attain that. And therefore, he says, Antakale chamameva smaran muktva kalevaram yah prayati samadbhavam yati nasti atra samshayaha. He says, Antakale chamameva. At the time of death, at Antakale, at the end of his life, if somebody, mam eva smaran muktva, the one who quits remembering me, mam eva, this is Krishna. And then what happens to him? He attains his nature. Does this mean that he becomes one with Krishna? No. He doesn't become one with Krishna. His nature becomes that of free of anxieties, like that of Krishna. Krishna stays in the Vaikuntha realms. And he also comes down to earth to reveal his pastimes to us. And what's happening here? Krishna is saying, if you remember me at the time of death, you will attain my own nature. It's just like if suppose somebody were to be elevated to become the Prime Minister of India or the President of India, they would probably go to the Rashtrapati Bhavan. And in the Rashtrapati Bhavan, somebody will not, even a poor man who goes there, he will have to be presented properly. So he'll be given a proper dress, he'll be given good food. So the very nature of the environment will make a person look opulent. In a likewise manner, when we go to Vaikuntha, we will partake of the nature of the absolute truth. Or in other words, when we go to the palace of a king, even the worker will, or the laborer in the palace, is going to eat the same food which is being cooked in the palace. It is not that he will be denied the food that is cooked there, right? So in that similar manner, when we go to Vaikuntha, our nature will be that of free of anxieties and always wishing for the welfare of everybody. Why? Because that wishing for the welfare of everybody and acting for the welfare of everybody is the nature of the Supreme Lord. And we will also partake of that nature by our own selves. So coming back to this slide here. So in multiple ways in chapter 6, 7, 8, and there are verses in 9, 10, and 11 too, which glorify bhakti. Now, Arjuna has personally experienced this, but yet there are people who would prefer to meditate on the impersonal Brahman. So who are these kind of people and what happens to them? So let's here go a little bit more. I'll have another PowerPoint for this. So again, coming back here, towards the end of 11th chapter, Krishna said, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Sudurdarsham idam rupam drishtavan asiyan mama deva api asya rupasya nityam darshana kankshinaha. Supreme Lord said, this form of mind, idam rupam, this form of mind, which you have seen is very difficult to see. Sudurdarsham. Even the devas are always eager to see this form. So it is not that this is a form of illusion. Those who think that there is a path to go to the absolute truth, wherein one becomes one merges one's identity with the absolute truth. We often think that is the highest, that is the toughest thing to accomplish. But Krishna is saying, no, come accessing my personal form and being in a relationship with my personal form is the toughest. Durdarshan is the difficult. But then what about the impersonal form? The impersonal nature of the absolute? Does it exist? Is it true? And what about those who try to access that impersonal aspect? We will get to know in this 12th chapter here. But one thing Krishna says before getting into it, in text 53 and 54, Naham veder na tapasa na dane na cha ijjaya shakya eva vidho drashtum drashtavan asimam yatha bhaktya tu ananya shakya aham evam vidorjuna myatum drashtum cha tatvena praveshtum cha parantapa. Not through the Vedas, not through austerities, not through charities, not through performance of sacrifice is it possible to see me as you see me. Only by Ananya Bhakti it is possible to know me, see me, or even merge with me, O Arjuna. Here is very important. If somebody wants to access Krishna and serve Krishna, he's already said the path of Bhakti where there is a distinction between the person who is served and the person who is serving is the best. But there are people who want to merge with Krishna. Even for those people, without a tinge of bhakti, they cannot even access this becoming one with Krishna. It does exist. It is a reality that there is an aspect where one can merge oneself with Krishna, but that is temporary. So that's the thing which we are going to speak about in a little while when we come to this 12th chapter. But even for that merging, one needs to have bhakti. So coming back to the next one here. And Krishna says, Mat karma krit mat paramo mat bhakta sangha varchitaha nirvaira sarva bhuteshu yahasamameti pandava. He who works for me, who holds me as supreme, who is devoted to me without material attachment, devoid of hatred of any living being, attains me, O Arjuna. And now in 12th chapter, Arjuna asks, I've heard so much about bhakti here. And there is also this whole thing which people, right in Arjuna's time, they're speaking of becoming one with the absolute. And how do they become one with the absolute? They try to focus on the aspect of Krishna which is unmanifest. And what is the meaning? What is the Sanskrit word for unmanifest? Avyaktam. And there is an indestructible form of Krishna. It's called Aksharam. Arjuna says there are these people who are very much focused on that Krishna. Actually, we cannot pigeonhole you into one thing. There is Krishna is the summum bonum of everything. The absolute is the summum bonum of everything, and they have to become one with this absolute truth. What about those people? So he asks, Evam satata yukta ye bhaktas tvam paryupasate ye chapi aksharam avyaktam tesham ke yoga vittamah. Arjuna says, who are the best knowers of yoga? Those devotees who worship you as just described, with desire to constantly associate with you, or those who worship the unmanifest Brahman? He's asking this question for all of us to know it clearly. And Krishna says, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Mayavesha Mano Ye Mam Nitya Yukta Upasate Shraddhaya Parayo Petas Te Me Yukta Tamam Mataha. Krishna says, I consider those who worship me, Shraddhaya, and desiring to associate with me constantly, with full faith, absorbing their minds in me, endowing with faith beyond the three modes of nature, to be the best knowers of yoga. Okay? Shraddhaya parayopetas teme yukta tamamataha. Just like we heard the word same yukta tamamataha there, again Krishna is telling the same thing. Repetition is quite important to bring forth the important points. So Maya Vesha Mano Ye Mam Nitya Yukta Upaste. Every day one has to be practicing this. It is, and the reason why Krishna brings about this Nitya Yukta Upasate is there is an understanding amongst some people who practice impersonalism that, in the beginning stages of our life, we should focus on worshipping the Supreme Lord with form. And as we progress in our life, we should slowly come away from worshipping the Supreme Lord with form. He no longer has form, he no longer has qualities, and we should then go to the avyakta nature of the absolute truth. To contradict it once in a while, Krishna directly uses the word Nitya Yukta. It is not that the method of worship of Krishna is true at some point in time and later it is not true. No, Nitya means eternal. Always one should worship Krishna in this nature that he has Nama, Rupa, Guna. He has a name, he has a form, he has qualities, he has attributes, and one can live in a relationship with the Supreme Lord who has these attributes. Okay. Then, coming further here, next. But what about those who are attached to the impersonal form? Krishna says, Kleta asakta chetasam avyakta hi gatir dukkam dehavadhir avapyate. Something. I have to see. You're all able to see the slides now?
No, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah. Okay. So those who are attached to this, so there is this phrase that is coming here, klesho adhikataras. So those who are attached to the avyakta, asakta chetasam. Asakta means like asakti, one really likes something. For those who are attached to this avyakta, this unmanifest form, klesho adhikataraha. It is a lot of difficulties. Avyakta hi gatir dukkham. If one has to really go to the unmanifest form, there is dukkham. It is a lot of difficulty. Dehavadhir avapyate. And it brings suffering to those who have bodies. To whom does it bring dukkham? To those who have, who are embodied, like people like us. Just so for a few minutes, I would like to just focus on this phrase, klesho adhikatarastesha. Let me see if I have brought it here. Yeah. So in this slide here, when we talk about Let me bring it. Okay. So this klesho adhikataras, right? How can we know? So Krishna is saying the path of worshipping the impersonal absolute truth is full of difficulty. And why? So let us hear from the words of one of the foremost proponents of the impersonal field, which is Sripada Adi Shankaracharya. He has written a book called Sadhana Panchakam, 5 verses, in which he talks about how one should practice in the path of realizing the unmanifest nature of the absolute truth. So what are the steps involved there? And so we'll go with the Acharya of the impersonal realization so that we get directly from him, right? So let's hear from him. The first step that one has to follow is what is called as the daily study of the Vedas. If somebody is on the path of the impersonal absolute truth, one has to purify oneself by directly studying the Vedas. And then it's just study, it just doesn't become a theoretical one. One has to do the Nitya Karma of the something called as the Brahma Yajna. And there is what is there in this Brahma is something called
The slide is not
Deva
visible, Prabhu. Prabhu, the slide is not visible.
Slide is not visible. Okay. Yeah.
Prabhu, it's visible. We are able to see it.
Okay.
Not visible.
Okay. I will do one thing. I'll just do one thing.
Prabhu, it is visible only by one a line comes, not full slide.
Oh, that's correct. That's
First
correct.
you showed. That is okay.
I'm going in animation mode, so I'll go one
Yes.
word at a time. Or
One by one.
point at a time.
It's coming. So okay.
Okay. Okay. So this Deva Yajna means what do we do for pleasing the Devatas? So there are like Supreme Lord Vishnu or Krishna is a Devata, and there are other Devatas too. The Devatas of who take care of the sun. There is the Surya Devata who gives us light. Then there is Agni who gives us fire. We have to please all of them. And after doing this, apart from doing this Deva Yajna, one has to do Pitri Yajna. That is, one has to please one's forefathers too. Why? Because of them that we actually got a body. They took care of us when we were young, and we are able to go on the path of the absolute truth because of them. So one has to do Pitri Yajna. Then one also has to do what is called as Manushya Yajna. What is Manushya Yajna? Manushya Yajna means that I am living in a society and I have to contribute something to the society at large. If I were to live just for myself, just a minute. Ashok Prabhu, I think you are unmuted. Can you mute yourself? Okay. So there is Manushya Yajna where we because we live along with others in the society, there is something called as government. And the government takes care of building the roads and having street lights. So we have to contribute something for it. We contribute in terms of, say, income tax or this tax, GST, etc. And in addition to it, if we want to keep our neighborhood clean, then only by keeping our neighborhood clean, we can also lead a healthy life. So we also have to contribute something to keep our neighborhood clean. So all this comes under this Manushya Yajna aspect. It is not that we live just for our own selves. There are these cows, goats, other animals, etc., who live around us. We need to take care of them. There are these ants, cockroaches, crows. So in order to take care of them every day in the morning, we offer our food to the Supreme Lord. We set aside some of this prasadam even to the crows. So we give food to everybody.
Shambhanu, can you make Yashaswini as a co-host? We'll take care of that. Muting part.
Huh? What is it? Yeah.
Can you make Yashaswini as co-host?
Okay.
I will take care of the...
Yes, I did.
other part.
Yeah, did it.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, apart from this Bhuta Yajna, then comes what is called as the Namithika Karma, that one has to take part in activities like marriage functions. Maybe there is something when some people pass away, Shraddha, when a child, like especially a male child, comes of a particular age, he has to do the Upanayana ceremony so that he goes to a teacher and learns how to recite the Vedic mantras, assimilate the Vedic mantras in his thought further on it, right? So all these steps that I'm telling are as per the impersonalist's methodology of functioning in this world here. Okay, this is not what we have to do as per Krishna for the Bhakti Path. That's a little different. We'll come to it, but I'm trying to give a compare and contrast here so that we have a proper base to compare with. Like we know clearly why it is klesho adhikataras, why the path of impersonal is very tough, and we have not even come to the crux of it as yet. Okay, then comes along with this, there is a kamya karma. Sripada Shankaracharya says that in the beginning stages, one may have a desire to perform an activity so that one gets some happiness out of it, while recognizing that maybe going back, merging oneself with the absolute truth is the final goal. I'm not ready for it. I have intellectually accepted it, but I still have desires. Therefore, he gives a leeway. He says, you do kamya karma. You can do it, but minimize it. That is what he's saying. And there is something called as Praia Karma, which is we do certain activities which are not supposed to be done. Like say, for example, one is supposed to, as part of this Nitya Karma for the Brahma Yajna, one has to every day worship in a sacrificial fire the absolute truth. And one may forget it on some particular day. One may not be able to do it on some days. So one has to do the Prayashchita Karma. Along with this comes the actual worship of the Supreme Lord with a particular form. So worshipping of the deity, Rupa, of the Supreme Lord is one of the steps according to Sripada Shankaracharya. And by doing so, what happens? Gradually, by this process of worshipping the deity from the Supreme Lord, one's desires drop off. And he also says that gradually sin will be removed. Because there is a purity in worshipping the deity from the Supreme Lord. He does not say, he does not say stop worshipping the form of the Supreme Lord. He says do it gradually. And as you do it, gradually reflect on the futility of pleasure and entertain the desire for knowing Atma. This becomes the key. From the stage where one is doing kamya karma, gradually one should reflect on the futility of pleasure. I am trying to enjoy so much and still I'm not getting things sufficiently in this world. As much as I try to enjoy, still there's some misery coming my way. This is the way which Sripada Shankaracharya asks his follower to practice. But then the moment he has a desire for knowing the Atma, right? A person should come to a stage which I have put in quotes called as leave the house. What does this leave the house actually mean? If a person can, he should leave the house and take sannyas. If not, he can live in this world, but he should live in a very detached way. He should think himself just like a passenger in a train who knows that he is going to be present in the train for some time, and then he is going to get off the train when it's meant to his compatriots in the train. He does not think that wherever the other persons in the car, in the compartment of the bogie are going, even I will go in the same way. Like I'm so attached to my wife and to my father and to my mother. If they are going somewhere, I will also go to the same place. If they are going in the next loka to some place, I too want to go to the next loka to the same place. That's not the way a person who has entertained the desire for knowing Atma should live. So let me pause here. The klesho adhikataraha, or the difficulty that happens here, is primarily, like if you look at the ones which I've highlighted in red, there are so many rules and regulations that one has to follow just to become purified. But the question that comes up is, worshipping the Supreme Lord's deity Rupa also purifies one. Why is it not sufficient? It is not sufficient for the follower of the path of Advaita or impersonalism because he does not have sufficient faith in it. And because he does not have sufficient faith, it doesn't work on him fully. The purity doesn't come off directly. As long as one holds on strongly to the fact that I need to get onto the bandwagon of merging with the absolute truth, one will not be able to have full faith in the deity worship of the Supreme Lord. So that's where the difficulty comes. Doing this and that, taking care of all the ingredients. There are many sacrifices to be performed where one will definitely commit some mistake, more so in Kali Yuga where nobody knows how to perform any yajnas, and therefore this prayashchitta becomes very tough for us. This prayashchitta karma, right? So this is not all to it. When we're talking about this leaving the house, it so happens that another type of klesho adhikatara, the problem that happens is, by thinking that one has to leave the house, one becomes very insensitive to one's family members. And therefore, they start having animosity towards the path of spiritual life. They feel that here was one father or one mother who was supposed to take care of me. I wanted to be with them. Now they are so detached from us that they are not even caring about us. And what is the root cause for all of this? This pursuit of spiritual life. So I don't want to pursue the spiritual life. This spiritual life has made me lose my emotional bearing in life. I don't want to be part of such a spiritual practice at all. So it alienates one generation of people away from spiritual life. That's the another klesho, adhikatara stesha, which Krishna is speaking about. Now, having said all of this, Sripad then says that this in company devotion. So one has to do so many things to cultivate steady devotion, according to Sripada Shankaracharya. And with these steady devotion, one also has to slowly cultivate qualities. What kind of qualities? The qualities, he says, are viveka, which means discrimination. What is right? What is wrong? Vairagya, detachment. And then one has to cultivate the quality of mumukshutva. The mumukshutva means eagerness. That one has to be very eager to achieve the ultimate goal of one's life right in this birth. That is this mumukshutva. Then we have shama, dhamma, etc. The control of the senses, the control of the mind, etc. Titiksha, tolerance. One should have shraddha. One should have faith. So like this, one has to cultivate various qualities conscientiously. If you look at it from the standpoint of the path of bhakti, the first thing that one has to develop is that one has to have a faith. Now I'll give a compare and contrast. So I have not even completed the path of Advaita, how one goes to the absolute. There is still many more points to come. But we'll tend to forget things. So let me tell it right away here itself. In the path of bhakti, here is a process which can potentially work. Just like all of you, You all have come to this program thinking maybe there is something which you were, and therefore you all have started chanting, associating with sadhu sangha, like you have had Kumarika Mataji, Harisham Prabhu, and Yugala Kishore Prabhu. These are morning classes. So by their association, you're all deepening your attraction for Krishna. And it naturally happens by sadhu sangha. If one's faith in Krishna alone being the deliverer is present, then sadhu sangha will help us cultivate it. And we are also cultivating steady devotion. How? You are all cultivating steady devotion by chanting the holy name of the Supreme Lord. Sadhu Sangha and cultivating steady devotion. It takes us all the way. Without this, and almost this, except for this worshiping the Supreme Lord, all these items in the red are the klesho adhikaras. Very tough to follow. Now, the other thing that Sripada Shankaracharya is saying here is one has to cultivate qualities conscientiously. In the path of bhakti, qualities come mostly automatically, which means that as one hears about Krishna, one develops an attraction for it and naturally it comes. We don't need to artificially perform that. Whereas here, one has to be very mindful. Why? Because one is not having the full faith that Krishna is going to cleanse my heart. And therefore, it becomes very difficult in the path of Advaita. Then, after doing all of this, Sripada Shankaracharya says that one has to approach a guru. A guru is at a level higher than a sadhu. And this guru will be a person who is already on the platform of experiencing the unmanifest. Okay. Check the time. Okay, I am running short of time. And when one sees such a guru, one has to surrender to the guru and serve the guru's padukas. What does the phrase serving the guru's padukas or slippers or sandals mean? It means that whatever is the wish of the spiritual master, one has to satisfy that. If the padukas don't demand attention, the padukas take a person from one place to the other place and protect that person. In a similar way, without drawing attention to our own selves, one should serve the guru. And this is true whether one is following the path of Advaita or one is following the path of personalism. Whether it is impersonalism or personalism, it is true. So one of the objectives the reason I wanted to bring about this Sadhana Panchakam from Sripada Shankaracharya is, many times we are very much interested in the differences between one path and another path. But we should also know the commonalities. In some cases, there are commonalities between the two. And we should appreciate the commonalities and also be aware of the differences. That's why I put this. So these serving the Guru, surrender to the Guru is common even with the path of bhakti. And then comes Sripada Shankaracharya's statement where he says that one has to assimilate the Mahavakyas. So I will pause here for a little while. What are these Mahavakyas? There is this whole gamut of Vedic literature which includes the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Puranas, the Itihasas, etc. From amongst all of them, Sripada Shankaracharya took 4 sentences from 4 different Upanishads and called it as these Mahavakyas. And he says everything depends on these 4 Mahavakyas. Is this Mahavakya universally accepted? No. What are these 4 Mahavakyas? One among them is Tat Tvam Asi. You are that. And there's one other Mahavakya which says Aham Brahmasmi. I am Brahman. So there's another, like these, we have 2 other statements here. Anyway, it's almost 7. So,
I am Atma Brahma.
Correct. Correct. So I can't go too much today because the next.
Can't hear you, Prabhu.
No sound.
Yeah. Now we.
Sorry. Okay. I'm okay. I think somebody muted me. But okay. I was saying that it's very. I'd like to open the floor for questions too. So maybe I'll just speak about Tattvamasi and a few more aspects here before ending this discussion today, and we'll continue with the rest in the following week. So this Tattvamasi is just a small section of one of the Upanishads. And what are the Upanishads? Upanishads take one theme and they take this one theme and elaborate on that one theme. In themselves the endpoint of the Vedic literature. Many people think they are Vedanta, which means this is the final thing here. But how do we have the Upanishads the way we are having today? The Upanishads, the way we are having today, was given to us by Vedavyas. Just a minute. Prior to the beginning of this Kali Yuga, the entire Vedic literature was memorized. And the Vedic literature comprised of the Samhita portion of the Vedas, the Upanishad portion of the Vedas, the Puranas, Itihasas, all were there together. Together they were one Veda. But when Sri Vedavyas came into the picture, somewhere around 3200 BC, he realized that people of Kali Yuga cannot remember so much. We'll have to distill it into small parts. And even that small part, we are not able to memorize or understand and keep it within us. That is our further problem. But nonetheless, he separately took out one portion of the scriptures as Puranas, another portion as Itihasas, etc. So in that sense, if you see, the Mahabharata is considers the pastimes of the Pandavas, the Kauravas, and others. But there are principles of religious life given in the Mahabharata. These were present in the original Vedas earlier itself. But it just so happens that Vedavyas recompiled it in a particular way and made it as a separate book. So one can get Upanishads, likewise through the Puranas too. And after Vedavyas wrote the Mahabharata, composed the Mahabharata, compiled the Vedas, etc., he was dissatisfied. He didn't know what's the reason he was dissatisfied for. But as he was dissatisfied, his guru, that is Narada Muni, came there. And Narada Muni said, you have written this Purana, that Purana, Mahabharata, everything you have written. But there is one thing you missed. And what you have missed is directly glorifying the absolute truth. And because of that, you are dissatisfied. So if you want to be satisfied, directly glorify the absolute truth, because that is what gives Yena Atma Suprasidati. That's the one which gives pleasure to the Atma. And therefore, he then began to compose the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is called the Amala Purana. Prior to this, he had even composed the Vedanta Sutra. The Vedanta Sutra actually takes different statements of the Upanishads and tries to link one statement to the other statement to the other statement. A sutra is a thread. On a thread, you can put pearls. And when you put different pearls together, then it becomes nice like a pearl necklace. So in that way, he thought, it's very confusing for me to say one statement in one Upanishad, another statement in another Upanishad. But if I were to link all of them together, then people will be able to understand. But it so happened that even by that endeavor, Vedavyasa himself was not satisfied. And that is why Narada Muni exhorted Veda Vyas to glorify Krishna directly, and that's how the Srimad Bhagavatam came into picture. And it is in the Srimad. So if we want to understand what is the summary or the essence of all literature, it is not the Upanishads that we have to go to. It is the Srimad Bhagavatam that we should go to. Whereas the statement what Sripad Shankaracharya has taken here is, he has taken a few statements from the Upanishads which very much match his ideology. So this is the reason why all the Vaishnavacharyas, including Sripad Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Nimbarkacharya, etc., all of them have opposed this red color thing, assimilate the Mahavakyas. It is like saying, when as a child, we might learn 2 plus 2 equal to 4. Now, even when one comes to 10th standard or bachelor's degree, etc., we should think the highest goal of life is 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. What about 10 plus 10 equal to 20? 10 into 10 multiplied by 2 is 20. There are so many other algebraic principles, group theoretic principles, which one can learn. But living with some intermediate step as the highest is considered a crime on the growth of the individual Atma. So that is why they said, number one, you have not looked at the scriptures in entirety. You are just taking bits and pieces what you like here and there. Whereas even if you look at, just forget from even the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita, which is called as Gita Upanishad, the essence of all the Upanishads, we have Krishna speaking directly that this path of impersonalism is klesho adhikataraha. And yet, Sripada Shankaracharya, if you look at it in his own commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, he also acknowledges that this path is very tough. And he says, but it's okay, let's try this tough path. And is this the absolute ultimate path? No. Because Krishna is saying that you are coming to me in an indirect way. Come to me in a direct way. Because after reaching the unmanifest, one has to anyway come to the manifest form of the Supreme Lord. That because the stage of experiencing the unmanifest is temporary in nature. After that, depending on Krishna's mercy, one can go further to reach the manifest nature of the Supreme Lord. In this regard, I might have told you earlier, but I will just repeat it once more. Many of you know this. Some of you are from South India. Some of you are from either Coimbatore or Kerala, Palakkad, Thrissur, etc. Those of you who are old enough, there was the senior sage of Kanchi by name. He was a very strong proponent of this principle that one has to become one with the absolute truth. He had in Kanchipuram itself, it's a bastion of the Sri Vaishnavas. ISKCON follows the Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Sri Vaishnavas are followers of Ramanujacharya. He very well knew the philosophy of the Sri Vaishnavas, etc. But he had no attraction for it. And he was a very pakka sadhu. He was very sincere in his practice of Advaita, etc. And throughout his life, he only said one has to become one with the absolute truth. And he became very old. He was almost 99 years old. And at that point in time, he told one of his disciples, I want to go to Vrindavan. I want to go to Govardhan. I want to circumambulate Govardhan. Just a few days before he passed away. So it so happened that throughout his life, he believed in being one with the absolute truth. But towards the end of his life, or his manifest pastimes, so to say, before his samadhi, he was able to realize the sweetness of Krishna. It is not necessary that sweetness of Krishna comes by merging with him. The sweetness of Krishna comes by rendering service to his holy dham and living with him in his pastimes in his holy dham. Even today, if one is purified enough, one can go to Govardhan and one can feel the presence of Krishna and one can experience it. That is why the followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, especially Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, they used to perform parikrama or going around Govardhan Hill every day. Every day they used to go around it. Why? Because one day as they used to go circumambulate to Govardhan Hill, they would see Krishna performing pastime with Srimati Radharani in one particular bower or one particular kunja, so to say. A group of trees is called as a kunja. Somewhere there would be a lake and they would perform some pastimes. And just being part of those pastimes would give them immense happiness. So what I'm trying to get in here is that first and foremost of Vedic literature, somebody wants to emphasize on it and they are emphasizing on it. But this is not the absolute one. The absolute truth comes from, if you want to know it, it is from the Srimad Bhakti, Supreme Lord and the Bhakta. Now, having said that, let's just take one of the Mahavakyas here, which is the Tat Tvam Asi. You are that, which is being told to Shvetaketu. If you look at the context of this verse, the verse, from the broader perspective of within that Upanishad, it says everything in this world is sentient in nature, and because it is sentient in nature, the Supreme Lord, where does it derive its sentience, or are they being able to feel something, perceive something? Everything is, all of us, we are able to see it because Supreme Lord is also sentient. You have that very same sentient nature as the absolute truth. And this is true. The correct thing here is the Supreme Lord has some qualities and we too have those qualities. It is very much true that we have those very same qualities as what is present in the Supreme Lord. But the difference is he has these qualities in Ananta. In infinite nature, he has his qualities. We have it in Anu. I am able to perceive some, if somebody hits me here, I'll be able to perceive some pain. But if somebody is unhappy in any portion of the world, Supreme Lord is able to feel that pain. That is the nature of his sentientness, or being sentient, having feelings there, right? So a very famous English scholar, he even said, this Tat Tvam Asi, the word Tat actually is used in a neutral gender. It is not used in terms of he or she. It's used in a neutral gender. The Supreme Lord has the absolute truth. That Supreme Lord has a sentient nature. That sentient nature is what you too have. That is what this Tattvam Asi, that Tat means that is what it is referring to. But the followers of Advaita would say, you are that absolute Brahman. They make the Brahman as insentient nature by calling it as Tat, that. And that is a problem. Nowhere else in the Vedic literature we hear the Brahman being called as Tat, that alone. A particular aspect of Brahman can be called that, but the entirety of Brahman cannot be called that. He is called with Saha, he. So, why is he called as Saha, he? Because Brahman is the Purusha. Purusha is a male principle. He has his energy, which is the Prakriti, which is the female principle. And the authors of the Upanishads, the composers, are very perfect with respect to Sanskrit grammar. They are not like us who know Sanskrit a little bit here and there. So, when Brahman in his entirety is being spoken of, he should be called as Saha, not Tat. Tat is that aspect of Brahman alone. So, even in assimilating the Mahavakyas, it becomes very problematic, because when one does not have the complete picture of the Vedic scriptures, one cannot assimilate this Mahavakyas. And after assimilating the Mahavakya, what should one do? According to Sripada Shankaracharya, he believes that these Mahavakyas say that I am Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi. And therefore, after mentally understanding it, one should mentally give up pride, identification of the body, and an argumentative mentality. And one should eat food just as medicine, not for taste. So effectively, one has to become like a vegetable in this life and be content with prarabdha, whatever I have got, I am content with it. And that thereby endure the dualities of this world. As one progresses in this, one should then sit in a comfortable position in solitude. That is, one should go to a place where nobody is present and one should sit in a comfortable position. And then the theoretical thing that one had about I am Brahman, one has to now practice it in reality as focusing the mind on Brahman and then see the Atma everywhere. So these are the steps. And if you look at it, this is a very difficult series of steps. One aspect of it I was telling here is that this is not the ultimate goal. That is one part of it. But second part, second is, what I was saying is, this is an incomplete understanding. But the third part, which is why we came here, is it is so tough to do all these yajnas, to focus the mind on Brahman, where we don't even know what to focus on. This unmanifest form is very tough to do. Going to an empty place, if you go to a place where nothing is present, maybe some dog will come and bite us. Maybe there is there are going to be some lizards which will come and trouble us. We don't know what is going to happen. It's not easy. So this is a very unnatural way of progressing. And that is why Krishna says, Klesho adhikataras tesham. So I'll pause here. We are still in the 4th, 5th verse of this chapter. We'll cover the rest of the verses in the following week and a little bit more about comparing the impersonal aspect with the personal aspect here next week. But any comments or questions?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
No comments?
We have time.
Yes, Mataji.
Yes, we have time till 7:30. We have time till 7:30. You can go on up to 7:15 and then open for discussion also.
Okay, sure. So I have 7 more minutes till here. Okay. So next, after all of these adhikataras, what about the path of bhakti? How is it that we act? You may have all these steps here. In the path of bhakti, do we cultivate these good qualities, etc.? We know about steady devotion here, but how do we take about all these other activities, like cultivating these qualities like viveka, vairagya, etc.? How does it happen? In the path of bhakti, the way it progresses is one should first develop attachment to Sri Guru. One should identify a suitable acharya and one should develop attachment to Guru. Then one should develop an attachment to Vrindavan Dham, the eternal abode of Vrindavan. So in that eternal abode of Vrindavan, there are many residents, and each of them have a particular mood of being in the relationship with the absolute truth. And how do we get to know about each of them? We get to know about them by hearing and by reading the scriptures which talk about different residents of Vrindavan. Who are these different residents of Vrindavan? We have the gopis like Srimati Radharani, Shama, Lalita, Vishaka, etc. Then we have those who are at the level of the parents of Krishna, like Yashoda, Nanda, Vrishabhanu, Kirtida, and others. Then we have those who are at the level of his friends, Subala, Stoka Krishna, Madhu Mangal, etc. So they all have their various relationships with Krishna. And by hearing about them, we develop attachment for them. In addition, we need to develop attachment to the devotees who are living in this world around us. The devotees of Vrindavan and its residents, they are present even today, but we are unable to access them physically. We can access them orally, but there are devotees around us. We should develop attachment to the devotees, knowing very well that these devotees are so great that they are able to chant the mantra of the Supreme Lord and do some service to the Supreme Lord. There is something nice about them. So the more we try to access it, we develop an attachment for such devotees. And we also have to develop an attachment to the mantra. For all of us, we have the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And by chanting every day, we develop an attachment to it. By doing this, what happens is our every activity is imbued with service to Radha and Krishna. Like in the previous slide, worshipping the Supreme Lord, along with all of this, helps us to drop off desires and remove sin. That was the impersonal way, because they didn't have sufficient faith in it. But when you have the sufficient faith in it, automatically our service becomes one with Radha and Krishna, and that will impel us to understand further. How do I apply these spiritual principles in my life? And that will make us associate with the teachings of the followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who are called the Goswamis, right? And then comes that we, in order to progress further, step by step, we would have to gradually give up idle talk. Rather than talking and discussing about everything in this world, our talk would gradually focus only about service to Krishna and about the mantra of the holy name. But then comes so many things, the inner problems that we have. We have lust, we have deceit, we have hypocrisy, we have prestige, false prestige, etc. These are all the problems we have. We have lust in the form of, hey, that's a beautiful man. I'd like to have company of this beautiful man or this beautiful young lady. Or this is so nice to eat here. I want to eat this, etc. All for me. But this all for me principle will not help us to have Krishna at the center. It only becomes me, myself at the center. So how do we overcome this lust? Instead of having, in the previous method, the way to overcome lust and everything was to abide in the awareness of I am Brahman. But this is still making the effort that I am Brahman. I am consciously trying to think that I can let go of this Brahman. It is dependent on my personal strength. But in the path of bhakti, that is not the way it works. The path of bhakti is simple, because all we have to do is, like a child cries for help, we have to ask for senior devotees who are free of lust and cry to them for help. And by their prayers and by their guidance, we will be able to conquer lust. How do we conquer lust? The senior devotees, by their prayer, they'll also give us some engagement. And that engagement will not give us sufficient time or energy to engage in lust. And by doing so, the lust gradually sublimates. Just like, camphor. Camphor, you keep it in the sky. You don't see camphor at all. In a similar way, lust just dies off. Lust is very tough to remove. But the method given is something which is very natural. Why? During the month of Kartik, in the month of November, we had different speakers speak about Krishna Katha. And they spoke about Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan, how he handled different demons, etc. Each of these demons, our Acharyas say, actually represents one of these bad qualities. And what happened to the residents of Vraja when these demons attacked? They just cried to help for Krishna. Krishna, please help us. They depended on Krishna, and Krishna took care. Our problem in this world is we want to solve all our problems by our own selves. We think we are too capable of solving our own problems. Unfortunately, that is not true. The only reality is that we are distracted. We do not have sufficient strength. But to give us strength, that is the purview of Krishna. Krishna is our dhobi. We cannot cleanse our heart. We can only chant the holy name. And when we chant the holy name of Krishna, he will come into our heart and he will cleanse us of this desire to enjoy things which are not really useful for us. And instead, enjoy our real relationship with Krishna, He will do that for us. We don't need to take the burden of this world on us. If you look at it, Sri Krishna devotees. And in the previous Yuga, when he appeared as Lord Ramachandra, he empowered Hanuman to lift an entire mountain and then come all the way to Lanka. Why? Because it is the devotees who carry Krishna's Shakti. Krishna is not a person who always says, oh, come to me, I will take care of everything. He likes to glorify his devotees. So he gives his own power to his great devotees like Hanuman. And Hanuman brought a huge mountain. So in the history of the world, how many people have we heard who could have lifted huge mountains? Krishna lifted it as a small child with his little finger on his left hand. Hanuman lifted it with his entire one hand, but it was his right hand. That's, or I'm sorry, I don't know whether it's a right or a left hand. That much I'm not sure. But he took with one hand. But still, it is a great thing to do, right? It is in that spirit where it says that if we have to overcome hell, we have to ask for devotees like Hanuman, please come and help me. I cannot take care of it. And they will take care of it. And likewise, when we also have a lot of deceit and hypocrisy in us. What is the deceit and hypocrisy? In the bullet points below, I have given some of the things. On the pretext of satisfying the Supreme Lord, we indulge in our own sense gratification. I may want to eat, there is, for those of you who are in Tamil, who are from Tamil Nadu, Kerala, there's something called as korakattai. If I may want to eat korakattai, and then I'll say, oh yeah, korakattai is like modak in Hindi. So just for me to eat that korakattai, oh yeah, we'll make that nice modak or korakattai. Then we'll offer it to the Supreme Lord and then I will eat. This is like I want to eat something and just the God is put as a namesake over there. Now, another kind of deceit is to say, hey, actually, I want to bring and give this gift of Krishna consciousness to everybody, but we approach only the rich people so that they become happy and they give us some money. So that, why? Because I want some money to maintain myself, but I'll pose myself as if saying, no, actually, I don't need anything else. I'm just giving something which is a pristine, sublime message of the scriptures. That is one way in which we have deceit and hypocrisy. Another way in which we actually have deceit with us is we think that, the Shastras say that one should have enough life to maintain body and soul together. So I am accumulating some money. But it so happens that we begin to accumulate much more money than is necessary. And for that, we try to put a lot of effort. It starts with saying, actually, for me to live, I need 10 lakh rupees. After some time, this 10 lakh becomes 1 crore. 1 crore becomes 10 crores. 10 crore will become 50 crores. Why? I need enough money, not just for everything, but once in a while I have to take my children to Switzerland, right? For me. So one Switzerland trip should be there. Along with Switzerland trip, they also need to see the beach, have to go to Maldives. So on Maldives trip also, I should have enough money. But along with it, my children, they should study well. I need to give an education in the United States for them. I have 2 children. Each child, $200,000 will go $400,000. So it's a never-ending thing, actually. So our shelter becomes all the things of this world. And then we say, yeah, I just need to earn a little bit more money for all of it. And we gradually tend to lose our faith in Bhakti. There's a very important statement here. It's 7:20. Okay. And there's a very important statement. Maybe I'll have to pause here after this for further questions. If we don't sacrifice for what we love, we will sacrifice what we love. I'll just repeat it. If we don't sacrifice for what we love, we will sacrifice what we love. We have the bhakti process, which is very rarely obtained. For this bhakti process, if we don't sacrifice some other things, over a period of time, we will sacrifice the bhakti process. And that this sacrifice in bhakti process happens through this process of deceit. We cheat our own selves, thinking I am actually spending more time in bhakti, but I just need a little bit more. And by cheating our own selves, finally, we will not even have time for bhakti. And that is why, in order to overcome this cheating propensity, we have to approach devotees and humbly request them for service. So what happens? We have less time to do other things in this world. We get some service from them, and through that media, we get purified. So when we request others for service, we do not think that my objectives are great in life, my vision of life is great. No, we think your vision of life is great, and therefore, please help me to solve, to be an instrument in serving your vision in life. That is how we'll let go of this deceit and hypocrisy. And likewise, we have this false prestige. I am so intelligent. I am so beautiful. I am so wealthy. I am not dependent on anybody. I am unlike them. They all come here just to come to the temple to eat food. I can actually make food for 100 people and serve prasadam to everybody. What are these? They are all dependent on me. Right? We have this false prestige in us. And how do we overcome this false prestige? We have to find these great sadhus, and we have to take the remnants of food taken by them. We have to take the dust of their feet. We have to take the water that they drank, the food that they ate, whatever is remaining. When we eat it, we get purified. And in that, because when they eat prasadam, they are in touch with the absolute truth. They are trying to please Supreme Lord by eating prasadam. So even the food that they eat becomes spiritualized. And for us, when we take that food, the remnants of what they have eaten, we become purified. And all our unwanted desires and this unwanted false prestige goes away. Anyway, I've still not covered everything. It's 7:23. Any comments? I'll pause here for today.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for a wonderful session. It was fantastic and very encouraging. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Krishna Prabhu, please bless me. You are all senior devotees. You have the wealth of experience in life. You have the commitment to chant the holy name of the Lord. Please to bless people like me to also come closer to Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Any comments, any thoughts? I might have said something which might have changed your perceptions. You all might have thought this is right, this is wrong, but I might have said something different. You can please express it. If there is something that I can add to it, I will add, else we can just hear you out. Please do say.
Prabhu, Madhusudan here.
Yes, Madhusudan.
Thank you for the session. And in fact, it was quite a lot today in the session. I mean, I did learn a few things. One request I have is it possible to, just summarize the key takeaways for the day session, so that is what ultimately registers in our minds. Not necessarily that you have to do it today, but I'm saying in general, if you do it, that probably, registers in us well.
Yes.
Otherwise, it will be an overload, and maybe people like me find it difficult to keep it. That's a request.
Sorry. I wish to add this summary too, but I didn't get time to put it in my slides because I've been keeping a little longer. I didn't get sufficient time for it. But the key takeaway here, I would like to say is, at least for today's session, the focus of today was klesho adhikatarastesha. The path of impersonalism is very tough. And it is not the absolute path. It is a particular path. It is valid path in the sense that there is a state where one can feel that one is becoming one with the absolute truth. But that is not eternal. Having reached the stage of this feeling, this oneness, one has to next move on to the stage of serving the absolute truth. So quite often we think, coming from India, mostly Vedanta means what Sripada Shankaracharya says, that is the ultimate correct philosophy. What I try to tell here is Krishna himself does not accept it. Now the rest of the other questions may come. Why did Shankaracharya do this way, etc.? If you have those questions, we can take up those questions. But Krishna is not advocating Advaita, and he does not want us to follow either from a principal standpoint of the end goal of Advaita or from a standpoint of the methodology of practice of Advaita. Neither of these two is encouraged. Instead, Ananya Bhakti of worshipping the Supreme Lord through these methods that I have given here is what is being encouraged. That's the Samam Bonam here. And that is one main point. And in the end, I told the other point that it is nice to know what is the Samam. At the end of it, we have to spend time on it. If we really like these principles, we have to sacrifice some time for it. Otherwise, all that we have learned, we are going to forget someday. It is not going to be there, and we are going to lose what we love. We have to sacrifice for what we love. That's the key message here. These are the two key messages.
Thank you, Prabhu. That was very useful.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Mataji, please tell me.
I have too many questions. I don't think so we can cover all the questions. But
you can let me know questions. Let me do one thing. Just a minute. Let me do one thing. You have too many questions. So I will note it down I will type it down.
So one question I have, Prabhu. We say that people who are true in their heart, basically those who are not trying to deceive others or doing something good, God gives them path to reach himself.
Yes.
In one way or another. So somewhere he makes the path for them. But then how come these Advaita they were also the good persons. They were trying to reach to the supreme truth. Then why God doesn't help them to understand the supreme truth? I mean, because they are the influential people. They are the one who influence a lot of people because they are very, very good. So why does it happen? Why does it happen? So that is
this is one question.
Because
we will cover this question.
That is one question.
Yeah, okay.
So this is one question. And then the second question is, when we talk about the deceits, so I mean, when we are living in the world, when we are with the family, when we are actually we have not become the sadhus basically. So is it something wrong, or is there something which is not correct when we want to eat something and we are offering it and we are eating? So in which way it is seen? It is seen in a way that we are trying to fulfill our wish, or it is seen in a way that whatever it is, we are trying to fulfill, but we are trying to put Krishna first, and then we are not at least trying to suppress our feelings also. So in which way it is seen? So that is my second question.
Okay, great. We can come. I'll cover this too, Mataji. Any other next question?
And the third question.
Third one, fourth one.
And the third question is basically, Prabhu, that again, your last bullet points were there, which because I got many questions, that we have to serve everyone, but then how do we know, or how do we feel that one person is being given more importance than the other, like both the materialistic or the wealthy people? So there was one question also that in the temples also, in the ISKCONs also, people who have the wealthy people, basically the VIPs, they are given the direct entries then compared to the people who do not have any money. And the explanation was that people who are really wealthy and they have lots of work which they can do in terms of benefiting the people in as a mass. So that's the reason they have been given preference. But I mean, these two things were little conflicting. So I mean, we are giving preference to them because they are doing work for many. I mean, in what sense it is for God or something, that is again it will become fourth question. But then they are being given preference, so that now if the Prime Minister comes, he can't stand in the queue. We have to give preference to him. Is it giving more preference to the materialistic people than the real devotee? I mean, how should we see it? Because the rules of the life says that if an important person comes, we have to give preference. So, so that's the third question. I had the two questions, but I think I forgot. I will message you. I had, but now I'm speaking, so I'm not getting those two questions.
It's other devotees here. I hope, okay, Ashok Prabhu, Masudan Prabhu, and others, I take 5-10 minutes, 7 to and just cover these 3 questions in 10 minutes. Is it okay?
Okay.
Sure, Prabhu.
Ashok Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu.
5-10 minutes. I'll cover this.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So first question, which I asked. Okay. So the first question which there are those who are not trying to cheat. There are those who are not trying to cheat. And she says that God gives them the right path reaching. If that is, and if as per what I mean, what I am saying, the path why first went with what Krishna said, Klesho Adhikata, and it is a difficult path of approaching the absolute truth. Why all of these are present? We have to even ask the question, why did God put us on earth at all? I mean, there is a path to go back to the absolute truth only when we have strayed away from the paths. If that were to be the case, if he is so kind enough, forget giving the wrong path, he should not have even put us in this material world. We need not be present. Whenever if at all we had strayed aside, he could have just made us come to the right path directly, right? But that is not the way it is happening. And the reason it is not happening is this world is a playground for people of different propensities to exhibit their propensities and progress in it. Why? Krishna wants to give full freedom to us. If we want to have freedom to be independent of Krishna, this world, this material world is the place for it. And accordingly, we'll have people of different ideologies here. Krishna, go with the current, something like some of the BJP fellows or the RSS fellows, something like that. They say, you have to say Jai Shri Ram. If there is a Muslim fellow who comes and says, no, you have to chant Jai Shri Ram, and only then I'll love you. Krishna is not like that. Krishna says, when you want to say my name, you can tell. If you don't want me, I will create a circumstance by which you can go away from me. He does it to such an extent, he creates this whole world, this planetary system, the different planets and the satellites, etc. He does all of that. So you look at it, Krishna, the nature of Krishna is that he is actually a servant of the jivas. All along, we have been telling that we have to serve Krishna, but actually the nature of Krishna is very different. He wants to glorify devotees. He wants to glorify and give them whatever they want. And he's like a parent who says, if you are going in the wrong path, I trust you that someday you will take your right decision and come to me. Until then, I will support you the way you are. Like sometimes we see parents who have children, they say, everything is fine, but if you go and marry a person from another community, that's it. You are no longer my daughter or son. That's it. I will not support you. But Krishna is not that kind of a father or that kind of a relative. He says, whether you make something right or wrong, I am there for you. To such an extent that he is present as an antaryami, or is present as a super soul. And as a super soul, he does the upadrashta and anumanta. He oversees and he sanctions. He wants to make us giving freedom to a jiva and educating a jiva that we all can come together. So in that sense, Krishna has to allow contradictory philosophies also to be present. He has anyway allowed people to be in this material world. So he has given Advaita, he has given Shinto, like Taoism, Confucianism, the Shinto religion, so many other religions in this world are present because he has to allow for freedom and of the jiva. There is no scope for love when there is no freedom. And that is why freedom has to be present and Krishna allows for it. Now, we perceive, like say, for example, we perceive some of the acharyas in the lineage of Shankaracharya to be very great. I myself have individually met some of them. I can say that I got a spur in wanting to understand the scriptures just by being in the presence of one of the Shankaracharyas from Sringeri. His name was Abhinava Vidyatirtha Swami. Fantastic person. He was like, when sitting next to, when you stand next to him, he was like that sun. But the thing here is, because he was practicing something given in the scripture, he got the power of it. But does it mean that just because he's practicing something from the scripture, he gets the power of it? Is it right? Not necessary. Krishna gives power even to some greatest people. Like Ravana also got so much power. Duryodhana also had a lot of power, right? But Krishna doesn't hide the essence from a person who does not want him. That is why it is very much important that we approach a Bhagavata, a soul who's a devotee, and learn bhakti from him. So until that point in time in this world, for eternity, the path of Advaita will exist, the path of materialism will exist, etc. Because there are always jivas who do not want to have a relationship with the absolute truth. So those who really want Krishna for Krishna's sake are very few in number. And that Krishna has already said that in the Bhagavad Gita. Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschit yadrisiddhe radanam vistanam kaschit mam vedi tattvataha. Very few people actually want to know Krishna in truth. So that's the way it is. That's the thing for your first question, Mataji. Your second question was, when we want to eat something that we like, is it wrong? The problem was, in the Advaita path, it is a problem. But in the path of Bhakti, we acknowledge that, yes, I want to eat something, and we just give it to the Supreme Lord. We continue with it. But we don't have the notion that what I'm doing is right. We pray to Krishna that one day, you please spiritualize my taste. And what will happen is, as we chant, one day, a stage will come when the tongue, as we chant, would want to chant more. And that becomes the real taste of the tongue. It is not that paneer butter masala or, pani puri or whatever, some Chinese gobi Manchurian, blah, blah. You can name anything. Punjabi dish or this dish, that dish, etc. Whatever be that. We are used to having taste based on that gobi Manchurian and things like that. But by chanting, gradually a taste in the tongue will come there. Even sparing that little time for eating becomes too much for us. We want to just eat quickly to satisfy our stomach, and the taste of chanting increases. That is one point. The second point here is, as we progress in bhakti, when we offer something very sincerely to Krishna and eat it, we feel the taste in what Krishna has eaten. It is not the taste as in like something is sweet, something is spicy. We enjoy that spice. No, there is a different taste in prasadam. So that is why bhakti is natural process, because we actually uncover the hidden taste in even the food items, because Krishna has personally eaten it. There is something that is material in this world. Like you take wheat and you take some salt and you make some chapati. That very same wheat and salt, etc., and some ghee or something which you get chapati out of it, will acquire a transcendental taste when Krishna eats it. And it is not necessary to let go of that. That is not what we hear in bhakti. And because it is natural for us that we are relishing Krishna prasadam, this is a very natural process. The path of bhakti is a natural process because of that. It is not difficult process. So if I had given you a different view, pardon me. So what was it that was written here? When I had indulging in sense gratification that I had said on the pretext is of satisfying the Supreme God, is the aspect of pleasing Krishna is not present. It is just, I want to be happy, and God becomes a namesake. He becomes just a via media for me to go keep a plate in front of him, you eat it, then take it back quickly from him, and I enjoy it. That is what is being criticized. Instead, make Krishna eat fully, satisfy him. It is not on the pretext of satisfying, actually satisfy him, and we will see the difference in us very soon. How we can enjoy the taste of prasadam. Srila Prabhupada, when he used to eat prasadam, he used to keep the plate in front of him without talking to anybody. Quietly, he would just eat his plate, enjoying the food that Krishna has eaten, because he was alive in his relationship with Krishna. And the third question that you said, VIPs are given direct entry. Is that not deceit? Because I had said here, serving rich, influential materialists instead of serving simple nirapeksha, servants of Krishna. The thing here is, what we are talking about here, the service that we are talking about here, is about giving Krishna bhakti, which means discussing Krishna Katha, reading the scriptures and trying to understand. So when one gives this knowledge only to wealthy people and not to those who really need it, then one falls guilty of doing this, and it will not help. That is the nature of deceit. But what is happening in temples is a little different there. There it is about the darshan alone. But when it comes to giving instructions and engaging in service, everybody is given a choice. In fact, the rich people, you usually don't take up that aspect because they don't have time. They don't see the value of it. So they just come quickly. They see the Lord in the deity, but they don't see the Lord in the pages of the Bhagavatam, or they don't see the Lord in the heart of devotees. It is said there are devotees of different kinds. There is the Kanishta, there is the Madhyama, and there is the Uttama. The Kanishta person sees God in the deity form, but he has no respect for other devotees. Whereas the Madhyama and the Uttama, they know that it is the Bhakta or the devotee who actually delivers Bhagavan to everybody. So they are more interested in serving the Bhakta than the Supreme Lord himself. So what we see in temples is there is actually a facade of importance given to a VIP, but actually the real importance is given to the Bhaktas who have been given an opportunity to serve, just like you. You were given an opportunity to make some garlands for the deities. Even Prime Minister Modi, who comes here, he is not given that opportunity. The garland that you make goes directly and is placed on the Supreme Lord. So you are the best VIP here compared to even Prime Minister or President who may come. When the Prime Minister comes, it is the priest who does the puja on behalf of him. But your offering goes directly in that sense, right? So we often think that just this one arati in front of the Lord is all the importance given. That is for people like the Prime Minister, they feel a sense of importance. But it is also important that we bring them to the temple. Why? For a person at a very powerful position, even a little bit of time that somehow or the other, we are able to get them to some spiritual place and associate with sadhus, it will help them. Why? Because they are in so much contact with material nature that they get contaminated easily. So we have to trick them into bringing them in touch with devotees. In fact, I'll give you an example of another extreme example. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the guru of Srila Prabhupada, he lived at a time when the Britishers were ruling India. He was there from 1860s or so to 1932, I think, or 34, somewhere there. The Britishers were ruling India at that time. He told, I want the Britishers to come to Mayapur and I want to explain to them what this Krishna Bhakti is. If they want, I am ready to even serve them meat. In fact, Bhakti Siddhanta had made it very strict, especially in Bengal. Bengal people eat meat like left, right, and center. He said that for us to follow this path of bhakti, for the commoners, he said, no meat, no eggs, etc. Follow the 4 regulative principles as given in the Srimad Bhagavad. But he said, for the sake of this British Commissioner of India, let him come to India. He was, I think, the Governor General of India. He invited him to Mayapur, which is in Nadia district, which is some 2 hours or 3 hours north of Calcutta. In those days itself, the Britishers had laid a train from Calcutta to Nadia. He said, you come here. If you want meat, I will serve you meat. But let's have a discussion. Why? He believed that it is so important to impress upon the ruler of the land what Krishna Bhakti is, so that at least they will not torture other devotees and they will allow other devotees to practice bhakti as is. So an acharya's vision is much bigger. If we positively impact the ruler of the land, then at least he will allow others to practice properly. Whether he practices or not is a different thing. Because he got some importance from those practicing bhakti, he will allow others to practice bhakti. So the acharya's heart is different. He wants more people to get access to it. So whatever it takes to do it, he will take care of it. So Mataji, Shweta Mataji, does this satisfy at least any one or some portion of the question, or you have further comments on it, Mataji?
No, Prabhu, I think, I understand the first thing.
Shweta Mataji, you there?
Yes, Prabhu, I'm speaking. Hello?
Yes, good. Yes, I'm able to hear you.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
so I'm clear for the first question that Krishna doesn't give us the direct path. So that's why the confusion is there. But it makes life for some of the devotees also difficult, because it becomes difficult for them to explain to many other people. But I think that is the way.
That's why. So explanation is one. No, okay. Now you might, like, say for example, you may have a father or a mother or anybody, any other relative to whom you would like to explain it to. Now, the thing with it here is everybody is very much attached to their viewpoint. And this is the very presence of multiple such paths actually humbles us, that we are not dependent on our intellectual strength. We are not dependent upon our ability to practice bhakti at a particular level, but it all depends upon the mercy of Krishna to open a switch in the other person's heart to appreciate this process and say no to Advaita and rather go to the path of bhakti. So it actually deepens our own spiritual life. If you look at it, many great Advaita scholars came to the path of bhakti on the strength of the bhakti of the devotee. So if others are not accepting it, it means that there is a long way for me to go. Of course, there is a right way way to present the topics, but there's a long way for me to go. So we lose our sense of controllership. And in that sense, Krishna is actually giving us an engagement where we actually become humble. And that is very much necessary for the progress of our soul. And we often think that if we want to convince others about it, they should understand it now. Not necessarily, really. Maybe somebody may take 1 second, 1 year, 10 years, 10 births. Everybody follows their own path. But our role is not to expect the end result. We are servants and servants alone. We serve others in bringing Krishna to their lives. If they accept it through us, great. Maybe we are not the right media alone. Maybe we are the person who should have triggered, but for him to be him or her to be cultivated, it is somebody else. That is okay. So we have to lose our sense of proprietorship. That's one thing here. So the path of bhakti is so sweet that if we chant properly and if we sing properly, it will attract everybody. And the greatest proof for that is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When he went to Varanasi, Varanasi was famous from a long time as the hub or the main place for Advaitavad or impersonalism. So he heard that there was a great assembly of all these sannyasis from Mayavada, led by Prakashananda Saraswati in Varanasi. Varanasi is where you also come from. So when he went there, they invited Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saying, hey, you look so effulgent. It looks like, almost look like the Supreme Lord, but you are having this sannyasi dress as a Mayavadi. But here you are chanting the name of God, you are singing the name of God, and you are dancing. You are very different from us. Why don't you also come? And when he was invited, he went to that assembly and he sat at a place where the entrance of the assembly where people used to wash their feet. And so all the other seniors said, why are you sitting there? Come sit with us. He said, you're all great people, but I don't think I'm that great. My place is sitting somewhere behind. That's okay. The Supreme Personality of Godhead very humbly sat at a place where people were washing their feet. He was taking, we struggled to wash his feet, and he was sitting at a place where people washed their feet. That was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But by seeing his humility, by hearing from him for the conclusions of the Vedic scriptures, automatically all of them understood that the path we are practicing is just a pure waste. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally convinced them. And that will happen for others too. All that we need to do here is we have to be good instruments and pray for them. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. That is called detached attachment. Okay?
Superb explanation, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhu. I have 2-3 more associated questions, but my children will kill me for not giving me breakfast.
Okay. Okay. Note down your questions. We'll cover it next time. You can send it by WhatsApp to me, and I'll try to include it in next week's presentation. Okay.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Okay, we'll end
Thank
here.
you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Almost 2 hours.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you. And please continue with the weekly sessions from tomorrow onwards, and we'll again meet next Sunday.
Gayatri Mataji, you have some points to say here? Looks like Gayatri Sampat Kumar Mataji.
No, Prabhuji. Thank you for spending a lot of time, and really I enjoyed the class. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.